Let's jump right into this explainer, because today we're looking at something absolutely wild, the microscopic factory inside plants. Have you ever looked at a massive tree or even just a little houseplant sitting on your desk and wondered how it actually powers its constant growth, repairs its cells, and just survives day to day? Well, we're going to break down the highly structured biological machinery that makes all of that possible.
Here's our roadmap. We're going from the outer leaves straight down to the inner factory floor of the mitochondria. We'll quickly cover, do plants actually breathe, glycolysis, fermentation, the Krebs cycle, the ETS, and wrap up with the amphibolic pathway.
Section 1. Do plants actually breathe? Let's kick this off with a mystery that might just challenge what you thought you knew about botany.
So we all know animals breathe to live, right? We inhale oxygen, we exhale carbon dioxide. But what about plants? They obviously don't have lungs. Do they really need to take in oxygen the way you and I do? The answer is a resounding yes. They absolutely do. But here's the trick. They don't need specialized organs like lungs because each plant part kind of just takes care of its own gas exchange. They use surface structures like the stomata on leaves and lenticles on stems. Since most living cells in a plant are sitting quite close to the surface and they're loosely packed with plenty of air spaces, they literally don't even need a complex transport system to move those gases around.
But why do they need this oxygen in the first place? Well, it's for respiration, basically breaking down food to release energy. Now, if a cell just combusted its food all at once, boom, most of that energy would simply be lost as heat. Totally useless, right? Instead, the plant cell strategy is to break it down step by step. The ultimate goal is to capture that released energy and store it in the chemical bonds of ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. You can think of ATP as the ultimate cellular energy currency. It's ready to be spent whenever and wherever the plant needs it.
Moving on to Section 2, glycolysis, splitting the sugar. Let's dive right into the very first department of our energy factory. Take a look at this incredibly complex chain of reactions. This is glycolysis, often called the EMP pathway, named after three scientists, Emden, Meyerhoff, and Parnas. The whole shebang happens right in the cytoplasm of the cell. What's really fascinating here is how a 6-carbon glucose molecule goes through a 10-step enzymatic process. It gets systematically broken down, or partially oxidized, into 2 molecules of a 3-carbon compound called pyruvic acid. And the craziest part? This specific step doesn't even need oxygen to happen.
Section 3, life without oxygen, fermentation. That brings us to a huge question. What actually happens if this biological factory has zero oxygen to work with after glycolysis is done? Well, without oxygen, organisms turn to fermentation. Following these pathways, that pyruvic acid we just made gets converted into other compounds. In some bacteria, and actually in our own muscles during a heavy workout, it turns into lactic acid. In yeast, it becomes ethanol and carbon dioxide. But here's the catch. These byproducts are pretty hazardous. In fact, yeast organisms will literally poison themselves to death when the alcohol concentration hits about 13%. No joke.
And this perfectly highlights the difference between anaerobic and aerobic processing. With fermentation, the energy yield is incredibly low. We're talking less than 7% of the energy locked in that original glucose molecule is actually released, and not even all of that gets trapped as ATP. But if oxygen is present, the cell shifts gears into aerobic respiration, and it goes all the way for a massive energy payoff by breaking the molecule completely down into carbon dioxide and water.
Section 4, the Krebs cycle. To unlock those massive energy reserves, the pyruvic acid has to be transported out of the cytoplasm and directly into the mitochondrial matrix. Once it's inside the mitochondria, aerobic respiration is essentially a 2-step dance. Step 1 happens right in the matrix. This is the complete oxidation of pyruvate by stripping away all of its hydrogen atoms, leaving behind nothing but carbon dioxide. Step 2 happens over on the inner membrane, and it involves passing the electrons from those stripped hydrogen atoms all the way down the line to molecular oxygen. Let's zoom in on that first step in the matrix. After pyruvic acid enters, it becomes acetyl-CoA and jumps onto the tricarboxylic acid cycle, which you probably know better as the Krebs cycle. Think of it like a continuous chemical Ferris wheel. As molecules cycle through, the plant extracts high-energy reducing equivalents, specifically NADH and FADH2, while tossing out carbon dioxide as waste.
Section 5, the energy payoff, ETS. Now that we have all these loaded carrier molecules, let's see how this builds up to the ultimate energy reward.
Down here at the inner mitochondrial membrane, which is the true powerhouse floor of our factory, the NADH and FADH2 drop off their high-energy electrons. These electrons get passed along a chain of carrier complexes, cleverly named complex 1 through complex 4. Eventually, they land on oxygen, creating water. But as these electrons move, they pump protons across the membrane, building up a really intense electrochemical gradient. This gradient literally acts like rushing water turning a turbine, driving the spinning machinery of complex V, that ATP synthase complex, to churn out massive amounts of ATP.
So just how much ATP are we actually talking about here? Well, if we do a theoretical balance sheet, assuming a perfectly sequential, orderly pathway, this incredibly efficient system yields a net gain of up to 38 ATP molecules from just one single microscopic molecule of glucose. Compare that to the measly 2 ATP we get from fermentation. Aerobic respiration is just an absolute powerhouse.
Section 6. The amphibolic pathway. Based on everything we've talked about, you'd be totally forgiven for thinking this whole process is strictly a demolition site, a catabolic pathway just relentlessly smashing molecules for energy.
But that is only half the story. It's actually an amphibolic pathway. That means the factory is a dynamic, two-way street. Yes, it does catabolism, breaking down carbs, fats, and proteins for energy. But it is equally vital for anabolism, or building things up. Whenever the cell needs to build new structures, it will literally reach in and withdraw intermediate compounds right out of the Krebs cycle or glycolysis to synthesize new things, like fatty acids or proteins.
Which leads us to a truly mind-bending realization to wrap up this explainer. The exact same cellular factory breaking down our food is simultaneously providing the vital building blocks needed to keep us put together. How on earth does the cell perfectly balance this constant overlapping cycle of creation and destruction every single second of our lives? It's an absolutely beautiful, intricate dance of biology and definitely something to marvel at the next time you look at a thriving, breathing plant.